I've brought this piece of legislation forward in good faith. When I see an issue and that I think that needs to be addressed, then what I do is I go and I try and address it and I bring it in front of this Dáil. I don't believe in just simply shouting from the sidelines. I believe in providing solutions where solutions are needed. And I have to say, Minister, I really welcome the fact that this bill isn't being opposed. And I really do look forward to engaging with yourselves at committee stage on this bill, as we do with most bills. And I really do hope that when we go to that stage, Minister, that you also do that in good faith and that you proactively look at trying to fix this particular issue. Now, Minister, I have some issues with what the Junior Housing Minister said in relation to this particular bill. I understand that the Junior Housing Minister, of course, isn't here at this moment in time, and I understand that you spoke differently in relation to this. However, the Minister said that this should not be rushed, that this type of legislation should not be rushed. Well, I tell you who needs this legislation to be rushed. It's the student I spoke to who lived in a shed where they paid €700 a month. The shed had been converted into 2 bedrooms with a makeshift kitchen and a shower installed. It had mould and was not suitable for human living. Another occupant who had moved out before this student had come in was paying €600 a month, but the homeowner then increased the rent by €100. Now, that income accrues to the homeowner tax-free. Another student told her story on Monday on RTE about how she lives in an attic where, Minister, she shares a bed with another person, again with no rights but tax-free income for the homeowner. Minister, when I say that I am concerned about the fact that we have students sharing beds with other students in a living capacity, when we have students who cannot lock their door at night, I cannot overemphasise how concerning that is. Minister, I really fundamentally am deeply concerned that this is the kind of situation that will end up as an RTE primetime investigates in years to come. And I tell you, nobody can say that they didn't know of the dangers and the concerns that they faced. Other women have told me that they were required to undertake childminding duties if they wanted to keep their rooms. And I've heard plenty of stories of students who were turfed out overnight with no time to try and source alternative accommodation. And Minister, the new academic year is just around the corner, so there is a rush, and to say that there isn't a rush simply is nonsense. And when that Minister, the Housing Minister, tells us that there is no rush, well, there seems to be no rush in publishing the student accommodation strategy. There's no rush in giving 1 red cent for student accommodation in last year's budget. But where is there a rush? There's a rush in providing Vulture Fund student accommodation, where we have a situation now where Vulture Funds own more student accommodation in Dublin than the Dublin universities themselves. Now, Minister, the other Minister, the Housing Minister, seemed to have bent over backwards, and I quote when he says that that it will not be in operation when the new academic year starts in September. Now, the ironic thing is that the Minister clearly doesn't realise is that actually the majority of homeowners support this type of legislation. They want to know that they have greater securities too. And Minister, I'll give you one example. Imagine if you're an elderly woman renting out a room, you're left in with a number of extra rooms left in your house, and you want to make a few bob because there's a huge cost of living crisis. And then that person that's renting off you says, look, I don't have the rent this week. And then the next week, sorry, Minister, I actually don't, or sorry to the woman, I'm sorry, I don't have the rent this week. And the next week, and the next week. That woman needs to have rights too, and needs to be able to ensure that they can enact what is in that legislation. And that is why it is so fundamentally important. And I will just finish with this, Minister. Minister, today you've brought forward your intention to enact fast-track legislation in relation to the issue of 51-week lease requirements. And I think that is very welcome. But here, there was no rush, unfortunately, either. And the concerning thing is that there are students who may have already signed a 51-week lease contract that it won't impact. But I do think it is very welcome, and I hope that it is brought into legislation and adopted as soon as possible. Look, Minister, I welcome the fact that you're here, Minister, and I really welcome the fact that you are not opposing this, and I welcome the fact that we will discuss this at committee level. But the previous Minister did annoy me with some of his comments, so thank you.